Your wife's been gone for years, darling. Time to modernize and join the real world. That was Cordelia Whitmore's parting shot as her bulldozers thundered onto my land at first light. No notice, no consent, just steel tracks tearing into an active cattle pasture, pouring nearly $8,000 worth of concrete for a so-called community bike path straight through the heart of my ranch. Diesel fumes hung heavy in the air, while deep ruts crushed the grass my 30 prize black Angus rely on to stay healthy. This is working ranch land. I shouted, waving my arms as if that could stop a machine. Cordelia only smiled, holding up what she claimed were easement papers and filming me like I was some kind of roadside attraction. Your cows can graze somewhere else, sweetie, she said. Progress doesn't wait. What she failed to remember was this wasn't just land. This was Taurus's territory. A 2,200-pound champion bull. 6 years reigning uncontested over that exact pasture. Bulls don't tolerate trespassers, especially not loud equipment or shiny Teslas parked where they eat. 3 months later, her husband's brand-new Tesla was reduced to over $100,000 worth of twisted, unrecognizable scrap metal. That moment of malicious compliance is now legendary, and the footage? Unreal. What would you have done? Drop a comment with where you're watching from, and hit like if you're rooting for the bull. My name's Dutch Kellerman, and I've been raising cattle on this land since before most of these newcomers could tell a bull from a steer. 3rd-generation rancher. I inherited these 47 acres from my grandfather back in 1995, and I've run 30 head of registered black Angus here ever since. For 28 straight years, I've watched the sunrise turn this pasture gold. Even now, the smell of morning hay pulls memories I can't escape, especially of Sarah. My wife passed away 18 months ago. Cancer took her fast, ruthless, and without mercy. It left me alone with memories in a ranch that felt unnaturally quiet, her laughter no longer bouncing off the barn walls. Some mornings I'd clip a funny article from paper, planning to share it with her, only to realize that kitchen chair would stay empty forever. Grief stretches time in cruel ways, making days crawl while years vanish, leaving too much silence and not enough purpose. That's about when Willowbrook Heights appeared, like a suburban infection spreading across land that used to feed families. 200 identical McMansions popped up almost overnight, each one priced higher than my entire herd combined. Suddenly, I had neighbors who believed grass was decorative carpet instead of livestock feed, the type who complained about roosters crowing, yet paid premium prices for farm-fresh eggs at Whole Foods. They wanted the look of country living, not the reality. Enter Cordelia Whitmore, with all the grace of a train derailment. 49 years old, former corporate lawyer from California, 3-term HOA president, white Tesla Model X with Eco-Fam vanity plates. She wore designer yoga pants like battle armor, treating every disagreement as a hostile corporate acquisition. PowerPoint presentations, legal threats, even Comic Sans emails, because nothing screams reasonable like playful fonts attached to lawsuits. She and her husband Brad had fled Silicon Valley after he landed a high-paying tech executive job, bringing with him that uniquely Californian passive-aggressive communication style that turns simple conversations into endless email chains longer than my property deed. It started small. Complaints about cattle noise at dawn. Apparently, black Angus aren't familiar with suburban sleep schedules or the concept of quiet hours. Then came certified letters claiming agricultural smells were damaging property values, because God forbid farmland smell like, well, farming. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, another legal threat arrived, always CC'd to her attorney, always insisting I move my livestock somewhere more appropriate for modern community standards. Here's what most people don't understand about property easements. They require explicit, written consent for recreational use. Emergency access rights from a decade ago cannot be magically transformed into bike paths without proper approval and documentation. Translation: a dusty old reference in county records doesn't give anyone free rein to build whatever they want on your land. But Cordelia thought she'd struck gold. Buried deep in county archives was a 1960s recreational easement she claimed cut straight through my main pasture. The same pasture Taurus had ruled for 6 years. That bull had marked that spot as his personal dining hall, and he didn't just dislike sharing. He charged anything that moved wrong within it. I'd watched him chase delivery trucks just for honking too close to his fence. The real violation happened on a freezing Tuesday morning in October. I stepped outside and found surveyors already at work, spray painting bright orange X's onto oak trees older than her entire family lineage. No call, no request, no knock on my door, just confident trespassing backed by blueprints showing concrete slicing straight through Taurus's kingdom. "Excuse me," I called out, breath fog in the air. "This is private property." The lead surveyor barely looked up. "HOA infrastructure project, sir. We've got documentation." That's when I saw her. Cordelia stood by my fence, phone raised, recording everything, her smile saying she finally thought she'd won. What she didn't realize was that 30 years of animal husbandry had taught me something important. With enough patience and the right conditioning, you can teach livestock almost any response you want. Within 48 hours of surveyor incident, Cordelia escalated from casual trespassing to full-scale legal warfare. A thick manila envelope arrived by certified mail. Return receipt requested. The kind of bureaucratic intimidation that practically screams, "I have lawyers and you're about to be crushed." Inside was a cease and desist letter accusing me of unlawfully interfering with approved municipal infrastructure development. My alleged offense? Asking trespassers to leave my own land. The letter had belonged to Marcus Webb, attorney at law, whose office address traced back to a strip mall wedge between a nail salon and a payday loan place. Always comforting when your legal adversary's counsel shares a parking lot with neon signs advertising cash advances. But Cordelia wasn't content with paper threats alone. She'd filed formal complaints with the county, claiming my aggressive livestock posed immediate public safety dangers along the proposed bike path. According to her sworn statements, Taurus had menaced innocent joggers through the fence line, conveniently leaving out that those joggers were hired surveyors trespassing on clearly posted private property while hauling equipment. The smell of fresh legal ink mixed with my morning coffee, creating a bitter brew as I read through her escalating demands. Immediate relocation of all cattle from the designated recreational corridor or face municipal enforcement actions and potential seizure. Translation: move them yourself or we'll move them for you, probably straight to the auction yard. Her attorney also threatened criminal charges for obstruction of public works if I continued harassing municipal contractors. Apparently, standing on your own land and asking questions counts as harassment in Cordelia's universe. That's when I decided to fight back using something Cordelia never expected from a rancher: actual legal knowledge and competent representation. I drove into town and hired Mackenzie Reeves, a seasoned agricultural attorney, who didn't operate out of a strip mall. Sharp as a new fence post and twice as tough, Mackenzie had spent 20 years defending farmers from exactly this kind of suburban land grab. "Let's start with the basics," she said, spreading Cordelia's documents across her solid oak desk like evidence at a crime scene. "Show me this miracle easement they're claiming give them control over your pasture." What we uncovered sent my blood pressure through the roof and made Mackenzie's eyes light up like it was Christmas morning. The 1960s document Cordelia waved around specified emergency vehicle access only: fire trucks, ambulances, police during emergencies. Recreational use wasn't mentioned anywhere in the original county filing. And more importantly, converting emergency access into public recreational use required entirely new documentation, environmental impact studies, public hearings, and verified written landowner consent. Cordelia had forged my signature on the recreational consent forms. Well, Mackenzie said, holding the document up to the light, "This is either the worst forger I've seen in 20 years, or you suddenly develop dyslexia that only affects your signature and makes you misspell your own name. Emergency access easements and recreational easements are legally distinct under state property law. Any conversion requires notarized consent, environmental review, and public approval. Bottom line, you can't just declare an old ambulance route a bike path because it fits your vision board." But Mackenzie's deeper digging turned this from a legal dispute into something personal. Cordelia's California law license had been suspended 3 years earlier for ethics violations involving forged signatures and misappropriated escrow funds. She'd been practicing law in Texas without authorization, making every document she filed legally worthless. Her threats carried the authority of a grocery list. While Mackenzie built our defense and prepared countersuits, I started my own project back at the ranch. 30 years of cattle work had taught me animals respond exceptionally well to consistent conditioning. Taurus, in particular, was far smarter than most people, including suburban HOA presidents, ever gave him credit for. I began simple audio association training. Recorded car alarm sounds played during feeding time, rewarding him with premium treats whenever he moved toward the noise. The crunch of cattle pellets between his massive jaws became the soundtrack to what I privately called Project Payback. Meanwhile, Cordelia scrambled to hire a properly licensed attorney, but the damage was done. Forged documents, unauthorized legal practice, fraudulent consent forms. Her paper trail practically begged for a criminal fraud investigation. Mackenzie filed complaints with the state bar, the county DA, and the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. The community started picking sides. Some neighbors quietly supported my right to use my land as I saw fit. Others swallowed Cordelia's progress and modernization pitch whole. The downtown coffee shop turned into neutral ground where conversation stopped when I walked in, then restarted in whispers after I left. Every evening, though, I'd head to the pasture and watch Taurus respond with increasing precision to those alarm sounds. Patient, consistent, methodical, just like anything worth doing right. Cordelia wasn't the type to retreat, especially after her legal threats backfired. If intimidation failed, she pivoted to environmental warfare, because nothing says modern leadership like weaponizing ecology. 2 weeks after Mackenzie exposed her forgeries, Cordelia launched what she called a community health initiative. Glossy flyers flooded Willowbrook Heights, filled with stock photos of polluted streams and bold headlines screaming, "Is your family drinking contaminated water?" Her accusation was classic Cordelia manipulation. My cattle, she claimed, were contaminating the creek with dangerous runoff, threatening public health. According to her emergency bulletin, immediate livestock relocation was necessary to prevent a crisis. She hired Dr. Richard Peton, an environmental consultant who showed up in a white van with official-looking green lettering. He wore a spotless lab coat and carried scientific-looking gear, taking samples upstream and downstream while Cordelia filmed for social media. 30 years of contamination, she declared to her phone, standing by a creek my cattle had safely used for decades. This community deserves better. Rage left a metallic taste in my mouth when I read Peton's preliminary report. He claimed dangerous E. coli levels downstream, demanding emergency livestock removal. But Mackenzie had taught me to verify everything. A quick search revealed Peton's lab was actually a spare bedroom outfitted with Amazon equipment. Even better, Richard Peton was really Richard Whitmore, Cordelia's brother-in-law, who'd changed his name after bankruptcy and a restraining order in California. His credentials? A business degree and zero scientific training. I contacted the actual EPA for certified testing. Their results told a very different story. My rotational grazing was improving water quality through natural filtration, while the HOA's excessive chemical fertilizer applications on their manicured lawns were creating measurable pollution problems downstream from their decorative pond. Prior appropriation law follows a first in time, first in right principle, meaning senior water users can legally demand junior users halt diversions during drought conditions, and cannot be forced to relocate based on fabricated environmental claims from late-arriving water rights holders. Translation: my grandfather's 1952 water rights legally outrank any subdivision built 70 years later. Community reaction split exactly how you'd expect. Some residents swallowed Cordelia's environmental panic hole, demanding immediate action against my contaminating cattle operation. Others quietly sided with property rights and common sense, including Vernon Jacobson, a retired civil engineer who'd moved into Willowbrook Heights specifically because he wanted to live near working farmland. "Son," Vernon said, approaching me discreetly in the hardware store aisle, "I've run my own water quality tests using real scientific methodology. Cordelia's numbers are complete fabrications, and some of us know it." While Mackenzie methodically dismantled Cordelia's environmental fraud case, I continued refining Taurus's conditioning program. The bull now responded with uncanny precision to specific car alarm frequencies, especially the high-pitched luxury alarms used by Tesla and BMW security systems. Feeding him premium molasses treats while playing those recorded sounds created an extremely strong association. He no longer flinched or ignored alarms. He moved toward them, expecting reward. The sweet, heavy scent of molasses blending with evening hay became my favorite smell on earth. It smelled like progress, like inevitability. Vindication arrived that weekend when the local newspaper published an investigative expose exposing Dr. Peton's fake credentials and his family connection to Cordelia. The reporter consulted legitimate environmental scientists who openly laughed at the fabricated test results and explained, on record, how properly managed cattle operations improve riparian ecosystem health. Cordelia's environmental warfare had detonated in her face, revealing just how far she was willing to go, even dragging family members into criminal fraud. Mackenzie added the fraudulent environmental reports to our expanding case file, building toward what she privately referred to as the motherlode of property rights violations. But my most satisfying progress happened nightly in the pasture. When Tesla alarm sounds played during feeding, Taurus snapped to attention instantly, orienting toward the noise and advancing with deliberate purpose. 2,200 pounds of behaviorally conditioned agricultural justice, calibrated for very specific automotive triggers. Cordelia's exposure should have ended the conflict. Instead, desperation transformed an HOA president into something far more dangerous. Rather than retreat, she escalated, crossing from harassment into outright felony intimidation. The first warning appeared on a gray Monday morning when I found my cattle water troughs contaminated with motor oil. Not enough to kill the animals, but enough to make the water undrinkable and force emergency hauling from my well. The acrid petroleum smell hanging in the morning mist told me someone had been on my property after dark, taking their time. 2 days later, while I attended Sarah's memorial service at the county cemetery, someone slashed all 4 tires on my truck. That timing wasn't accidental. Targeting me while I stood at my wife's grave crossed a line that had nothing to do with property disputes and everything to do with personal cruelty. But Cordelia was just warming up. She hired Apex Security Services to conduct what she called community protection patrols. 3 men in black uniforms with official-looking badges began parking at my gate, tailing delivery trucks, and filming anyone who visited my ranch. When neighbors complained about the intimidation, the guards claimed they were protecting Willowbrook Heights from agricultural terrorism threats. The morning I found 2 of my cattle limping from small-caliber pellet gun wounds, I knew this had crossed into felony animal abuse. The pellets were embedded in non-vital muscle, painful, deliberately non-lethal. Whoever did it wanted fear, not dead animals and serious charges. That's when Mackenzie and I turned our attention to Apex Security Services with a level of scrutiny they clearly hadn't anticipated. Apex wasn't licensed under state security regulations. The business registration led to a mail forwarding service, and the 3 so-called guards were convicted felons recruited through Craigslist using untraceable email accounts. Even worse for Cordelia, subpoenaed financial records showed direct payments from the HOA emergency fund to Apex. She was embezzling community money to hire unlicensed criminals to intimidate a neighbor, qualifying as conspiracy, racketeering, and federal wire fraud. Federal law applies when criminal enterprises use legitimate organizations like HOAs to commit repeated felonies, triggering mandatory minimum sentences and total asset forfeiture. Translation: stealing HOA funds to hire felons can legally annihilate your entire life. But while the legal system moved at bureaucratic speed, I accelerated Taurus's conditioning with scientific precision. Weeks of controlled training revealed something critical. Tesla Model X alarms emit a distinctive 1,200 Hz tone that produced his strongest response. When he heard that frequency, Taurus advanced with absolute focus, every muscle aligned toward the sound, from over 200 yards away. The steady, thunderous rhythm of Taurus's hooves striking packed earth during evening conditioning sessions became my favorite sound on the ranch. Each flawless response meant we were closing on perfect timing, measured, deliberate, inevitable. Community sentiment began shifting fast once residents learned about Cordelia's criminal use of fake security contractors. Vernon Jacobson quietly rallied legitimate Willowbrook Heights homeowners who were genuinely horrified by what their HOA president had been doing in their name. Their own investigation uncovered a pattern of systematic fund misappropriation. HOA money siphoned off for Cordelia's personal expenses, including Tesla lease payments and luxury vacations, falsely categorized as community development research. "We moved here for a peaceful retirement," Vernon told me during a discreet conversation in the hardware store, "not to bankroll some power-hungry transplant's criminal enterprise against farming neighbors." The security harassment campaign backfired hard, drawing unwanted media scrutiny to Cordelia's finances. Local television reporters began digging into HOA mismanagement, and the state attorney general's Consumer Protection Division opened formal proceedings after receiving multiple homeowner complaints. But desperation only pushed Cordelia toward more reckless escalation. Thursday evening brought an anonymous phone call threatening to accidentally open my cattle gates at night, letting the herd wander onto busy county roads where they'd likely be hit by traffic. The voice was electronically distorted, but the passive-aggressive phrasing and entitled venom were unmistakably Cordelia's. That same night, I installed motion-activated security cameras across the property and started sleeping in the barn. The familiar smell of hay and livestock mixed with a metallic edge of protective anger as I realized just how far she was willing to go to steal my family's legacy. Mackenzie had filed complaints with multiple law enforcement agencies, but warned me that building airtight criminal cases took time, months of documentation, before arrests could happen. Justice would come eventually, but my cattle needed protection now. That's when I made the strategic decision that would define how this ended. Instead of waiting quietly for legal justice, I would create an opportunity for public accountability. The annual Willowbrook Heights HOA meeting was approaching, and Cordelia planned to use it to announce her final land acquisition push. 3 weeks into Mackenzie's investigation, she called with information that turned this from a property dispute into something far darker. "Dutch, you need to sit down for this," she said, spreading financial records across her conference table like pieces of a crime scene puzzle. "This was never about a bike path. This was never even about your land." The forensic accounting revealed a conspiracy that made my hands shake. Cordelia and her husband Brad had been embezzling from Willowbrook Heights for over 2 years, stealing nearly $890,000 through fake vendor contracts, inflated maintenance invoices, and fabricated emergency expenses. And that was just the surface. Brad's tech company was hemorrhaging cash, surviving only through investor fraud and creative accounting. They were 3 weeks from bankruptcy when Cordelia discovered my property's development potential. The bike path was a pressure tactic designed to force me off the land so they could sell the entire area to Sunbelt Development Corporation for $3.2 million. The sharp smell of fresh legal paperwork mixed with Mackenzie's coffee as she explained the scope of their operation. Preliminary purchase agreements were already signed, contingent on acquiring my 47 acres. The bike path was never recreational. It was the access road for a planned luxury subdivision, 200 more McMansions. Then came the part that turned my blood to ice. 25 years ago, my late wife Sarah had filed a California State Bar complaint that destroyed Cordelia's legal career. Her testimony about forged client signatures and stolen escrow funds directly led to Cordelia's license suspension and forced relocation. This entire scheme was revenge against a woman who wasn't even alive to see it. "She's been planning this since she learned where you lived," Mackenzie said, her voice tight with controlled fury. The HOA presidency, this subdivision, routing the bike path through Sarah's Memorial Grove. All of it was designed to torment her widower and steal the land where you scattered her ashes. Suddenly everything made sense. The sabotage during Sarah's memorial service, the escalation during her birthday month, the targeting of the oak trees where I'd buried her ashes. Cordelia hadn't just attacked my property. She'd weaponized my grief. When criminal conspiracies cross state lines using mail, wire, or electronic communication, federal prosecutors can invoke racketeering statutes allowing total asset seizure, homes, vehicles, accounts, everything. Translation: Cordelia's entire lifestyle was about to disappear. Then Mackenzie delivered the news that flipped the power dynamic completely. The FBI had enough evidence for immediate arrests on federal charges carrying mandatory 15-year minimum sentences. More importantly, They wanted to coordinate public arrests at the upcoming HOA meeting for maximum impact. This is how it's going to happen, Mackenzie said calmly. Cordelia plans to announce eminent domain proceedings against your ranch. The moment she attempts that fraudulent land grab, federal agents positioned throughout the audience will arrest her for racketeering, conspiracy, and wire fraud. In that moment, I held every card. I could destroy Cordelia legally through federal prosecution, financially through asset forfeiture, professionally through criminal conviction. But legal justice alone, while deeply satisfying, wouldn't deliver the public humiliation she deserved for desecrating my wife's memory. That's when it hit me. I didn't have to choose between justice and satisfaction. I could have both. Mackenzie would coordinate the FBI arrests and criminal charges. I would handle the humiliation, delivered by 2,200 pounds of perfectly conditioned agricultural justice. The plan came together with elegant simplicity. Cordelia would arrive at the community center in her Tesla, convinced she was finally stealing my family's land. FBI agents would already be positioned for arrests. Television crews would be there to document everything, and tourists would be waiting in the adjacent pasture, trained, focused, and primed to respond to Tesla alarm frequencies. Some crimes deserve prison sentences. This one deserved to be trampled by an enraged bull in front of 300 witnesses and live cameras. The metallic taste of anticipated justice lingered as I walked the pasture that evening, watching tourists complete the final phase of his conditioning. Legal victory was locked in through federal prosecution. Public humiliation would be delivered with agricultural precision. Cordelia wanted to erase Sarah's memory and steal our legacy. Instead, she was about to become a viral cautionary tale, the most expensive property rights lesson Texas had ever seen. With FBI coordination secured and Cordelia's criminal exposure guaranteed, I had exactly 1 week to orchestrate the most satisfying act of agricultural justice in state history. It required flawless timing, elite animal conditioning, and seamless coordination between federal agents and one exceptionally intelligent bull. Mackenzie handled the legal choreography like a surgeon. She arranged for Special Agent Martinez to embed undercover agents throughout the HOA meeting, sealed arrest warrants ready the instant Cordelia attempted her fraudulent land grab. Local media were tipped off about a major HOA transparency reveal, ensuring full documentation of her collapse. My side of the operation demanded a different skill set, animal behavioral psychology and automotive acoustics. The metallic click of my phone recording Tesla alarm frequencies became the soundtrack of Taurus's advanced conditioning. Dawn and dusk sessions refined his response until he could distinguish between luxury vehicle alarm profiles with unnerving accuracy. Classical conditioning reaches peak effectiveness after 200 to 300 audio repetitions over 14 to 21 days, especially with bulls that demonstrate exceptional audio memory retention. Translation: with patience and premium molasses treats, you can train a bull to respond to a precise trigger with near military reliability. The sweet, sticky scent of molasses mixed with morning hay became my constant companion. During training, I confirmed that Taurus reacted most aggressively to the 1,200 Hz tone produced by Tesla Model X panic alarms, a frequency that now triggered immediate territorial defense from over 400 yards away. Community preparation required subtle political maneuvering. Vernon Jacobson quietly organized homeowners disgusted by Cordelia's crimes. They planned to pack Monday's meeting with residents demanding accountability, ensuring a massive audience for her arrest and the fate of her Tesla. "We want front row seats when agents drag her out in cuffs," Vernon said at the hardware store, "and we want video of what happens to that car afterward." The technical challenge was positioning Taurus for maximum visual impact without legal exposure. The community center parking lot bordered my pasture, separated by standard cattle fencing, adequate for containment, not for a bull pursuing a specific audio target with conditioned determination. My solution was beautifully legal. DIY remote control gate systems, built with smartphone apps, wireless actuators, and hardware store parts. Under $200 total. Perfectly lawful livestock management tools, but invaluable for precision timing. From anywhere within half a mile, I could open a gate on command. Wednesday was reconnaissance day, camera angles, sight lines, contingency routes. I hired a professional videographer under the guise of filming an agricultural education documentary, ensuring multiple high-definition angles for legal evidence and inevitable virality. Psychological manipulation completed the setup. I staged phone conversations, implying negotiated surrender of my property rights. Mackenzie played along flawlessly, conducting loud settlement talks in public cafes where Cordelia's spy network would report every word. By Friday, Cordelia was celebrating online, posting about modernization and victory over agricultural obstructionism. Her confidence was premature and exactly what I needed. Final preparations focus on Taurus's feeding schedule. Bulls defend territory most aggressively during evening feeding periods. I wanted him primed when Cordelia's panic alarm provided the trigger. Safety was engineered carefully. Temporary barriers redirected his charge toward parked vehicles, not people. A veterinarian stood discreetly on standby to ensure Taurus's well-being. Evening grain mixed with the sharp tang of anticipation as I ran final sessions. Taurus now responded to Tesla alarms with the reliability of German engineering fused with ranch-bred determination. 2,200 pounds of purpose-built livestock, ready to teach respect for Texas property rights. Saturday's dress rehearsal was flawless. Gates responded instantly. Taurus charged on cue. Containment protocols held. Sunday evening, I sat on the porch reviewing the timeline, while Taurus grazed calmly. Federal agents would deliver criminal justice. My bull would deliver personal justice. Cordelia would learn that some lessons demand very expensive tuition. Monday's HOA meeting would fuse federal law enforcement with precision agriculture. Content agricultural advocates would celebrate for generations. I expected Cordelia to maintain her smug confidence through the weekend. Instead, panic drove her into a final, reckless escalation that revealed how dangerous cornered criminals become. Saturday morning, I discovered professional-grade surveillance equipment mounted on telephone poles overlooking my land. Not amateur cameras, military spec units with night vision and audio capture. The acrid smell of electronics mixed with my coffee as I examined them. This wasn't HOA harassment anymore. This was federal-level surveillance. Mackenzie's weekend call confirmed it. Dutch, we got a problem. Cordelia hired Blackstone Consulting Services for an emergency security assessment. Blackstone isn't legit. They're private military contractors, intimidation and evidence destruction specialists. Blackstone was a front run by Brad's former Silicon Valley partners, men facing their own federal fraud investigations who needed this land deal to survive. This wasn't just revenge anymore. Multiple criminal enterprises were coordinating. Sunday afternoon, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows began patrolling Willowbrook Heights. Armed men in tactical gear claimed they were protecting the community from agricultural terrorism. Their true intent became clear that evening when they attempted the unthinkable, breaking into my barn to plant evidence. My motion-activated cameras captured masked figures attempting to stash explosives and weapons. Grade chemicals among my equipment. Planting evidence is a standalone felony. Automatic 10-year sentences added to existing charges, plus mandatory asset forfeiture. Translation: framing a rancher for terrorism guarantees decades in federal prison. Their plan collapsed instantly. Silent alarms alerted local police and FBI surveillance teams. Agent Martinez arrived within 20 minutes, arresting 2 Blackstone operatives caught with illegal explosives and fraudulent federal identification documents. What they never anticipated was that I'd been documenting everything. Hidden cameras installed across my property during the past week of preparation had captured their entire operation. Their criminal conspiracy now existed in crystal-clear high-definition footage, evidence destined for multiple federal trials. But Cordelia's panic pushed her toward one last escalation that exposed the true size of her criminal web. Monday morning, she tried to bribe County Sheriff Thompson with $50,000 in cash, demanding an emergency raid on my property using the evidence her people had failed to plant. The sheriff contacted the FBI immediately and agreed to wear recording equipment during his meeting with her. Every word of her attempted payoff was captured by federal surveillance, stacking corruption charges onto her already towering list of felonies. Mrs. Whitmore, Sheriff Thompson said calmly on the recording. "You're asking me to raid an innocent man's property based on evidence your own people tried to plant. That isn't law enforcement. That's organized crime." By Monday afternoon, Agent Martinez had 4 Blackstone operatives in custody and warrants issued for Brad's business partners in California. Cordelia's empire was collapsing faster than a card house in a Texas windstorm. Still, she clung to belief that the evening's HOA meeting would somehow rescue her land grab scheme. What she didn't know was that federal investigators now classified the case as a major racketeering prosecution involving multiple interstate criminal enterprises. The metallic taste of satisfaction mixed with my pre-meeting coffee as I finalized preparations for Taurus's moment in the spotlight. While federal prosecutors built cases that would lock up Cordelia's entire network for decades, my bull stood ready to deliver the kind of instant, visceral justice social media feeds crave. The most gratifying part was knowing she'd sealed her own fate. What began as embezzlement had escalated into terrorism allegations, evidence tampering, and RICO charges carrying mandatory life sentences. Some criminals know when to surrender. Others keep digging until they've hollowed out their own graves. Cordelia had finished digging hers with military-grade surveillance gear and explosive materials. Tonight's HOA meeting would merge federal justice with agricultural spectacle. Precision only possible when FBI investigations meet perfectly trained livestock. The hours leading up to Monday evening brought Cordelia's most reckless move yet. With her Blackstone team arrested and her framing attempt exposed, she launched a full-scale character assassination campaign, meant to destroy my credibility before the arrest began. A morning email blast sent through the official Willowbrook Heights HOA system contained fabricated photos of me abusing cattle, doctor financial records accusing me of running a meth lab, and forged police reports claiming I'd threatened to massacre HOA leadership with farm equipment. The audacity was staggering and fatal to her case. Using the official HOA email, created a permanent digital trail straight to her personal computer. Every recipient instantly became a potential federal witness. The fakes were so sloppy that even suburban homeowners spotted them immediately. The meth lab photos clearly showed standard cattle vaccination supplies. The forged police reports were riddled with spelling errors and formatting mistakes that screamed amateur fraud. Mackenzie's phone rang nonstop as residents called to report Cordelia's lies and voice support for prosecution, instead of turning the community against me. Her smear campaign unified legitimate homeowners, demanding her removal and arrest. Still, she wasn't done burning bridges. Monday afternoon brought her most vicious personal attack. She hired actors to pose as grieving relatives, claiming my wife Sarah had been a secret drug addict and that her cancer treatment masked illegal pharmaceutical trafficking. Using my deceased wife as ammunition crossed every line of decency. Rage burned bitter in my throat as I read posts suggesting Sarah's memorial Oak hid drug money and criminal evidence. That cruelty guaranteed her humiliation would be absolute. Agent Martinez called that evening with updates. "Dutch, this is shaping up to be the largest RICO case this district has ever seen. 47 federal felony counts across 6 statutes. Mandatory life if she's convicted on even half." The Financial Crimes Unit uncovered more. Brad's tech company had been laundering money for crypto scammers, siphoning HOA funds into digital assets to bankroll the land grab. Investigators estimated over $2.3 million stolen. Worse, Cordelia had coordinated with California organized crime figures planning to use my land as a distribution hub for interstate drug trafficking. That bike path wasn't for recreation. It was a proposed smuggling corridor. When crime spanned state lines and interstate commerce, sentencing enhancements eliminate parole and mandate full asset forfeiture. Translation: Cordelia would lose everything and spend the rest of her life in federal prison. As evening approached and the community center parking lot filled, I ran final checks. Taurus grazed in the optimal position. The smartphone control gate system was armed. Professional cameras waited in silence. The air smelled like dusk and inevitability as Cordelia's white Tesla rolled in exactly where I predicted, right beside the weekend fence section, perfectly placed for an unforgettable automotive lesson. Federal agents were embedded throughout the crowd, ready to move the instant she announced her fraudulent land seizure. Vernon Jacobson had packed the room with residents demanding accountability. guaranteeing witnesses for both her arrest and what would happen to her car. Adrenaline and vindication mixed as I walked toward the entrance. Federal prosecution would deliver life sentences. Personal justice would arrive courtesy of a very expensive German vehicle meeting a very determined bull, captured in high definition for the internet to enjoy. Cordelia had terrorized a grieving widower and desecrated my wife's memory for profit. Tonight, she learned that some lessons come with tuition measured in destroyed Teslas and federal prison time. The Willowbrook Heights Community Center had never seen a crowd like it. 300 residents packed the hall. Local media waited for a major announcement. Federal agents blended into the audience with warrants ready. Cordelia arrived fashionably late in her white Tesla Model X, parking exactly where planned, right beside the fence separating the lot from Taurus's evening pasture. Grazing area. The satisfied smile on her face said it all. She truly believed she was about to announce a successful takeover of my family's land through legal intimidation and outright criminal fraud. The acrid scent of nervous sweat mixed with burnt community center coffee as every seat filled. Vernon Jacobson had rallied legitimate homeowners hungry for accountability, while Cordelia's remaining loyalists clustered defensively near the front, blissfully unaware they were about to witness their leader's spectacular collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, Cordelia purred from the podium, confidence dripping from every word. Tonight, we celebrate a major victory for community progress and modernization. After months of negotiations, we've successfully resolved the agricultural obstruction that delayed our bike path development. She clicked her remote, flashing polished renderings of a sleek trail, cutting straight through what she called my former pasture. Thanks to collaboration and legal persistence, we've secured all necessary easements and environmental approvals for this exciting recreational enhancement. That was when Mackenzie rose from her seat in the third row, a federal warrant folder unmistakably visible in her hands. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said clearly, "I'm Attorney Mackenzie Reeves, representing Dutch Kellerman. Would you like to explain to this community how you forged my client's signature on those easement documents?" The room erupted into stunned murmurs as Mackenzie activated the projector, displaying high-definition images of Cordelia's forged signatures beside my authentic one. The differences were obvious to everyone. "And while we're here," Mackenzie continued with razor-sharp precision, "perhaps you can explain how you embezzled $890,000 from this community's emergency fund to finance your personal land acquisition scheme." Cordelia's face drained of color as bank records filled the screen, tracing direct transfers from HOA accounts into her personal banking system. The evidence was devastating. "These are lies," Cordelia screamed, her composure shattering. "This is a conspiracy between a grieving widower and a corrupt attorney trying to block community development." That was when Special Agent Martinez stepped forward from near the rear exit, FBI credentials held high. "Cordelia Whitmore, you are under arrest for federal racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and attempted bribery of a law enforcement official." The community center exploded into chaos as reality hit. This was a live federal arrest. Cameras rolled as Martinez read Cordelia her rights, and 2 agents moved swiftly to arrest Brad, who'd been lurking near the emergency exit. But Cordelia wasn't done. Panic overtook her reason. Instead of surrendering, she bolted for the door, shrieking about persecution while slamming her Tesla's panic button. The piercing 1,200 hertz alarm echoed across the parking lot and instantly triggered Taurus's conditioned response from his grazing position nearly 400 yards away. I calmly activated my smartphone gate controls. What followed became legend in Texas ranching circles. Taurus exploded to the weakened fence with the unstoppable momentum of 2,200 pounds of perfectly conditioned justice. Cordelia's white Tesla Model X instantly became the most expensive HOA lesson ever recorded. Panels crumpled, glass shattered, and German engineering met agricultural reality as the crowd poured outside. Gasps turning into laughter as luxury was reduced to scrap. Cameras caught everything. "Ma'am," Agent Martinez said dryly over screams, "your insurance does not cover acts of livestock justice." The moment peaked when I walked to the demolished vehicle, handed Cordelia the federal civil lawsuit papers, and delivered my line. "Progress waits for no bulls, sweetie." Applause erupted as agents escorted Cordelia and Brad away. Taurus stood proudly beside his work, Calmly chewing the treats, I toss him for flawless execution. 6 months later, justice had fully settled. Cordelia received 7 years in federal prison and over $2 million in restitution. Brad got 5 years for conspiracy and fraud. For additional conspirators received sentences ranging from 3 to 12 years. Federal asset forfeiture was swift and thorough. The Tesla wreckage, their McMansion, luxury vehicles, and every stolen dollar seized. Homeowners recovered their funds with interest. I received civil settlements. But the real transformation came afterward. A new HOA board was elected, adopting the Good Neighbor Charter, prioritizing cooperation over coercion. Vernon Jacobson became president, bringing competence and common sense. The bike path was completed, rerouted respectfully around my land, with educational signage and a memorial bench overlooking my pasture. The Sarah Kellerman Memorial Agricultural Education Fund was established with $200,000 from settlements, supporting students at Texas A&M studying sustainable ranching. "She'd be proud," said the first recipient. I donated development rights to the Texas Land Conservancy, protecting all 47 acres forever. Our annual Heritage Ranch Festival now draws over 2,000 visitors, funding scholarships and conservation. Torres became a celebrity, the Justice Bull. His video passed 15 million views. Breeding rights fund animal rescue programs statewide. But the greatest change was personal. Sarah's Oak Grove is now a living classroom. Mackenzie and I became partners, professionally and personally, launching the Ranch Defense Legal Foundation to help farmers fight land grabs. The impact spread statewide. 12 HOAs were challenged. The Kellerman Act passed, strengthening protections for agricultural land. I testified before Congress. Communities changed. At sunset, I watched cattle graze where corruption once stood. Visitors rest on the bench overlooking the spot where a bull taught unforgettable lessons about respect, memory, and justice. What began in grief ended in healing, conservation, and community. Sarah's legacy lives on, in land preserved, student supported, and a reminder that ordinary people can defeat corruption, sometimes with patience, evidence, and one very well-trained bull. Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where HOA Karens finally meet their match. If this one had you cheering or cringing, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for the next wild HOA tale.